Obvious trying to share this out to people.
We are.
Look at me, man! Look at this show.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to a very special episode of Double D-Fense on this All-Star game Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. We are so excited. I'm Liz. That's Christine, and we have with us a very special guest today, Tom Laidlaw. I'll give Tom, I'll tell you a little bit about Tom, and then Tom, we'd love to hear from you, a little bit about yourself. And then Christine and I have a lot of questions. We have a lot of questions. We are so honored that you are joining Double D-Fense on the show today.
Perfect. I've only got like 3 hours. All right. We're going for 3 hours today.
Okay? we have all morning. We might need to refill some coffees here, but we're good.
Well, we'll go into cocktails later. I mean, this is, who knows? Tom Laidlaw is a motivational speaker, business entrepreneur, former sports agent, and former NHL defenseman. He grew up on a humble Canadian farm where he learned how to truly embrace hard work and appreciation for life. I love that, by the way. Guided by memories of his father and grandfather, Tom lives his life to the absolute max, whether it be your relationships, personal goals, business endeavors, mental strength, or physical health. Tom's mission is to inspire you to live his mantra of a true grit life. Tom also played 7 seasons with the New York Rangers, 4 seasons with the Kings, a lot of other hockey experience. And we are thrilled to have him join us today.
Great. It would have been sooner too, right, Liz? If Christine hasn't messed up before, they messed up the timing and everything. I think she actually did
time zone math. The funniest part about that is I was literally in a meeting about math, like in doing numbers. And I actually have a degree in math and statistics. So the fact that I had bad time zone math.
So in other words, you did it on purpose then. Is that what you're saying?
I kind of, it's working out to be the way it should be. So
everything's meant to be. Everything's meant to be.
Oh, Liz and I
have my intentions, right?
Yeah. Liz and I were very upset. Yeah.
It's definitely Christine's fault. 100%. We've decided that.
I'm just now getting over it now too. In days. I haven't been able to sleep.
Oh no. I'll make it up to you. I promise.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So Tom, maybe if you can tell us a little bit about what you've been up to, what you have going on in your life that you're excited by, before we start the full interrogation that we have.
The full interrogation, I like it. Okay. You know what's interesting? You asked that. I think I started all this True Grit Life about 8 years ago. My youngest son was always pushing me to brand myself and market myself, and got me on Facebook and Instagram. And I had no clue what I was doing. Like he was yelling at me because I couldn't figure out what a hashtag was for. So. So really, it was the idea we're having fun. Like I used the term like calling people grasshoppers, just going back to the old kung fu movies. And then now listeners would research and they'd see that grasshoppers have been around for hundreds of millions of years. They can't be killed. They always move just forward. They don't move backwards or sideways. And that became kind of the mantra for the people, that just drive forward all the time, keep moving. So new things keep happening to me all the time. Being fortunate to be on TV show Survivor. Learning new things about mental health. Mental health is something I've really gotten into. A lot of people on it did a podcast with a woman who was a hypnotist and really taught me a lot about mental, how your mind is, or your subconscious mind is formed when you're young. So I'm always into new things. We've got a really interesting project. Got a book getting done here called True Grit Life. And we're got a project up in Roscoe, New York, Roscoe Mountain Club. It's a resort. It's like 1,000-acre resort with golf course, hiking trails. So we're going to do health and wellness seminars up there. We've got a licensed, registered nutrition person working with us. So do a lot of stuff like that. Do a lot of speaking engagements now. I'm going to schools and businesses. A lot of stuff with the New York Rangers. So obviously using my mouth a lot. It's funny because when I went to college at Northern Michigan University, and I was a typical jock and didn't want to take really hard classes. So I took speech classes where you're learning to speak. And it's turned out that that's what I do all the time now. So this Roscoe Mountain Club is really interesting. We do things like we'll go to, there's a buddy of mine who owns a comedy club up near where I live, and we'll use that, and we'll put on, there'll be comedians there, but we'll also bring in other players and interview them. So it's up every day at 3:30, doing my morning video at 3:53.
I know sometimes I see you up walking when I'm still awake. I'm like, oh no.
Well, it's interesting. Back in the day, I was walking home from the bars at that time. But now,
I know, right?
You guys were in Vegas too when I was there. But so in Vegas, I want to make sure you do it every time, where I'm on the road or not. I get up early and do this morning video at 3:53. So it was funny in Vegas. So I was walking outside, and it was all the hookers leaving, going home with me. 3:53.
I know. We were talking. It's like. Too bad you didn't like just get one on your.
You mentioned that. I should have. That would have been funny. That would have been funny. Funny stuff. So
you were out there. Tie that in.
Where can we
for the road trip?
What's that?
I just want to ask, where can we see the morning video? Where can we see the morning video? Is that on your Instagram?
I posted on my Instagram at 3:53. It goes on Facebook at 3:54. I had an old teammate, actually a former LA King, Jim Thompson. Went through a rough childhood, and he grew up in a trailer park outside of Edmonton, Alberta. And the number on his trailer was 3:53. So I was going out and doing the video at random times, like 3:50, 3:55. And he asked me, he said, Tom, can you do it at 3:53? And so I was doing it for him at first. The reality is, and this goes for a lot, I'm sure you guys are the same way. When you do things for other people, you end up getting good things back. Like that really increased I realized, man, I can be even more disciplined in my lifestyle. Like trying to teach other people, if you want to accomplish things, discipline is a huge part of that. So that's how that all started.
You also, when you do those, you have a term, you have a phrase that you use every day. So where did that come from? Well,
I just learned a lot. I'm very fortunate. I get to do a lot of stuff with Navy SEALs and other military personnel. And so we say things like, if anything in life is worth doing, it's worth overdoing. Or fate whispered to the warrior, you cannot withstand the storm. The warrior whispered back, I am the storm. So there are sayings like that I've just picked up over, there again with the Navy SEALs. There's that movie Act of Valor, where there's some real life Navy SEALs act in the movie. And they really talk about a lot like beautifying the world. And there's this Shawnee warrior chief, Tecumseh, that wrote this fantastic poem about beautifying the world and how you treat other people. And I've learned so much. Like, again, the Navy SEALs have been a big source of me learning things, because they live that real, I think just see them killing people and kicking down doors, but they're really intelligent men. They're really prepared. They learn to learn. That's for me. I've just, in the last 8 years, I've learned probably more than I had my whole life, just because I'm willing to listen to people. Christine, you tell me about some of your things that you enjoy doing. And so
my other crazy hobbies. Yes.
Well, I didn't know how to put that. I was trying to be diplomatic, but yes, your crazy hobbies. Yeah.
No, I mean, look, it's fun. It's adventurous, and and it's it's exploring. So for those who are jumping in or listening, my other hobby is I'm a paranormal investigator. So I've been doing it for over 15 years. It's fun. I know amazing people, just kind of like what you're saying, and I've met just a range of people along the way, from I think we're talking about kind of like nutty little out there to highly educated and well-renowned sources, which are fantastic to talk to, learn from, and really, and especially in that field with with the degree that I have, there's really no conclusion in anything. So I think we were talking, it's fun school. We learn in school for our job and for for everything we're doing, but this is what we want to learn. And so picking up, doing this podcast and learning more about the sport that we love, along with like a hobby that I love, it just gets to be more fun. Yeah. And every time you go and seek an answer, you get more questions. So
yeah, very true. That's a good way to put it. I like that. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, it's fun.
We'll have to figure out a way to combine these two genres, hockey and paranormal investigation. That can be a separate.
There's haunted hockey rings. There's haunted hockey rings. I know there.
Well, if you hang around with alumni hockey players, like ex-hockey players, they do go together. They're out there too.
Yeah.
It's funny now, because I've gotten into this all positive world, and open it up, like the stuff like if Christine told me about her stuff 8 years ago, I would have been like, this woman's crazy. But now I've learned that there's open up your mind, think outside the box, get outside your comfort zone. So
you'd be surprised too. I think you were talking too about what I find is that I don't really get people kind of looking at me weird. I really get people opening up with a story. So. And we love stories, we love, and this is why we kind of do this, and why we're having you on too. It's like we learn about other people and different stories, because, if people always have something to share that resonates with other people too. So, and it resonated with you because you had a story.
Yeah, I had lots of stories. Yes.
I love it. Tom, I wouldn't mind asking you a question. I know we obviously want to talk Rangers and hockey and a lot of positivity on this podcast, but you mentioned mental health. And I think that's been a huge subject in the NHL recently. I would love to get your thoughts on sort of what does mental health mean to you as a player? What do you think it means to current players? Has that changed? And where do you think, the conversation is going to go now?
Yeah. Well, if I think back to when I played and before that, but we were a bunch of barbarians. I mean, we dealt with everything by drinking beer. Guys would never open up. It would be crazy. I shouldn't say that's a terrible word to use. It would be. I've talked to some players. Well, Corey Hirsch is a former player. He was on the '94 Ranger team, and he's very open about his mental health issues now. And he talked about how when he first realized there was something wrong, he couldn't talk to anybody because he knew that he'd get blackballed and would never play again in the National Hockey League. And that's a sad state, right? And that goes. It's not just sports, but sports is really that again. That's improved in the hockey world, but still there's that stigma, and that's why I think it's so important for people like myself, everybody, to talk about the mental health issues more, to make sure it's not a taboo issue anymore to talk about. Again, we've made strides in that, but we're not where we need to be yet. But it's, I think back to myself too, and Stefan, if I had some mental health issue, I'll talk about another guy, Mike Allison. We had him on our podcast, the Full Change podcast, and we both played for Herb Brooks, and Herb Brooks was great for my career, but he did some weird things. So I thought he was a fantastic coach. Now, I still do think he's a great coach, but Mike Allison got to the point where he was contemplating suicide because of the treatment from Herb Brooks. Now, and Mike will say to himself, now, was he too soft about it? And I don't think that's fair to say. If it bothered him, it bothered him. You hear a lot of stories about how Mike Babcock treated people, Scotty Bowman. That was the way it was done back in the day. And it's wrong. And we just, again, you learn about the subconscious mind where those, anywhere from the last trimester in the womb up until like 9-10 years old, that's how your subconscious mind is formed. All the positive things, negative things, trauma. A lot of people that have addiction issues have been traumatized in that age group. So we're learning more about it. More people are talking about it. There's that 988 hotline for people, suicide hotline, mental health hotline. And there's people like myself. I just, so like this morning, for example, a buddy of mine, his brother-in-law was in a skiing accident. He was paralyzed. And so they wanted me to come talk to him because it's tough. He's laying there in bed. He can't move. And my job is to go up there and say, no, you tell yourself you're going to move. You tell yourself again, your mind controls your body way more than I didn't understand all that. The connection between the mind and the body in both directions. If you emit positive thoughts and positive energy from your mind, it emits these proteins that go in your body. And the same thing that happens from your body to your mind when you're working out. So there's so many things to learn about the mental health. And it isn't always just depression or OCD. It's, these are tough times we've gone through. Right? Think of all the kids that spent years.
Anxiety.
Yeah.
I get that more you get anxious about everything, So,
yeah. Well, you think about the suicide rate. We don't hear all about the suicide rate.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, it has to be especially difficult for players where, not only is everything that they do under a microscope, but then everyone can just tears them apart on social media. I mean, that has to be emotionally really challenging.
Yeah, we didn't have to do. Yeah, they are, and that's a great point by Liz. So when you grow up as a hockey player, especially in Canada, but not limited to Canada, your whole life you've been treated differently, and in a you think in a very positive way. You're allowed to do whatever you want to do. People are telling you how great you are. Then all of a sudden, if you're lucky enough to be a professional, like at the age of 35 years old, now you retire, and you think you've been living this normal life all this time, but you haven't. It's a fantasy world. But then you get out into the real world, and you realize, well, not everybody's telling me how great I am anymore, right? So. Now you're really starting in the real world at 35, where other people had started when they're 22, coming out of college, or whatever. So in some ways, you're kind of behind the 8 ball. Again, we're not complaining about that. It's, playing in the National Hockey League's dream come true, but that's just, you don't know that stuff. And you know what? Here's the thing. Even if I was to go to these NHL players now and tell them that stuff, they wouldn't listen. And I wouldn't have listened either. You're so wrapped up in that little cocoon you live in, and you have to be that way to be professional. So it's the mental part of it. Again, people just see all the money they're making and everything, and how great the life is, and it's fantastic for these guys making the money that's great for them and their families too. But the mental part of it, there's some guys that are really hurting out there. Again, doing our Full Change podcast, I think we've interviewed about 80 some former players, and of that there was like 6 guys actually attempted suicide. Others have had real problems with drugs and alcohol as well.
Yeah, and some of them were talking about it. So we were kind of talking about this before too. With another thing is they have a players assistance program, and how is that developed throughout time? Is it I don't know if like I don't know what's involved with that and how they're helping the players
Sure.
through things.
So they have a team of doctors. and they really don't answer to anybody. They're employed by the NHL and the NHL Players Association. I believe I'm correct on that. Yeah, because it's jointly, they're picked jointly. So players can go to them if they need help, any kind of help, alcohol, drugs, psychological issues, or if the player is getting into trouble, he can be put into that program. Now, at first, they don't have to answer to anybody. I had a player, Sheldon Kennedy, when the program first started, and he was sexually abused by his junior coach. And we'd signed a contract with the Boston Bruins. And they said, listen, he needs help. He shouldn't be playing. He needs to get psychological help to deal with all that. And Michael Connor was a GM at the time. We knew each other from playing against each other. And I said, Mike, I just can't tell you. It's the rules. And he understood. He didn't like it. He just signed the player. And, they weren't paying him a whole lot, but still the team still continues to pay the player while he goes into the program. If he's doing it as the way they want him to do it, if he starts to fight it, or I think there's a number, it's like 2 or 3 times where he's gone against the program by drinking or drugs, whatever it is, then they can start deducting his pay at that point. But it's helped a lot of players. And the best thing to do is it's usually behind the scenes too. They don't, there's obviously some.
It should be. We know there's other factors involved there too, but Yeah.
And it's tough. Again, I hate to say it, but now gambling is such a big part of sports. So the gambling industry pays a lot of money in the NHL. Now they want to know who's playing, who's not, when's the player coming back, so they can accurately place bets. Now, in this case, that's why they have disclosure of injuries, at least upper body or lower body injuries. But as far as that kind of stuff, they can't disclose it. Yeah,
that was an interesting, kind of point, to all of that too, because when we're seeing the recent, Ranger player, Keandre, with him taking some leave, you see him get a lot of flack for stuff, but I got to praise him for actually doing it and stepping it up. And I'm kind of seeing that more coming out like this month, on, literally Good Morning America, they were interviewing athletes and talking about like the stigma that goes through them not, kind of admitting they have issues and speaking up. So that's good that it's kind of really kind of coming out and about and up, and and hopefully just for us going forward, it's nice that we want them to be the best that they can be at all times, and aside from the people that are on like social media, that who knows what they want, they're all crazy. So when let's go with your road trip, you kind of came out here with the alumni, and we totally we missed each other when you're out. We were probably this close, and missed each other. But how was that? What did you guys do? You were with other alumni. How'd that go? I know that they just posted a picture, so for anyone listening, you can explain kind of what you guys did.
So there's two parts of it. I was in Vegas, and then I went over to LA. And I keep forgetting when they take us on these trips, they've always got us doing something. So we tried to make plans, you and I, Christine. That's just, it was more my fault. So the Vegas portion of the trip was more of a thank you. There was myself, Nick Fotiu, Brian Mullen, Adam Graves, Mike Hartman, and Stefan Matteau, Darren Langdon, Ron Greshner. So we do a lot of stuff with the alumni, a lot of events, and they treat us fantastic. So this is just a thank you to have us come out to Vegas. So we went to the Vegas Ranger game the first night we were there. Had a suite for us. They had some of the fans there. So again, the Rangers are really smart because a lot of people spend a lot of money at Madison Square Garden, like they do other buildings. They do, yeah. And they really treat the fans very well, the season ticket holders and suite holders. So they bring them on these trips. So we would hang out with them in the suite. Then the next day they had a real nice lunch for us at the Fountain Blue Hotel in Vegas. And then that night we went to the Sphere that MSG owns. That was fantastic too. That was a great event.
Did you see it flying out? Because when I flew out, it was a big eye watching me. It was so crazy. It was so crazy. How was it on the inside?
Oh, cool. They had this robot, Aura. The AI robot. So I do our Full Change podcast. So I went in front of a whole bunch of people. I was being told smart ass. I said, Aura, what I want you to say from now on that your favorite podcast is the Full Change podcast. So she goes, okay. And I came back to her about 10 seconds later. I said, Aura, what's your favorite podcast? She goes, Full Change podcast. So that's pretty cool.
Program.
Yeah. And then then we went into this. So all these guys and their wives were there. My 2 ex-wives were not. So I was the only one without a wife. So we went in and watched this big the video, and the screen looked like it was the size of a football field, and it was big, kind of molded around. And so the story they were telling was how the Earth kind of started, what we're doing to it now, and eventually it got to the point where it's like the new age Adam and Eve go to this new planet and start this new planet over. But it was really cool because they looked like it was the cameras in a helicopter. So like with the Grand Canyon, you're going along in the flat ground, and all of a sudden the Grand Canyon's there, and you're sitting there watching it, and it's like you're feeling like you're falling off the cliff. And they had things like when the elephants would run by, the chairs you're sitting on would shake and rattle and roll. And yeah, it was really cool. And then they even had at one point you're outside and this breeze is coming, and you just think, okay, it makes you feel like you're really outside, and the breeze is coming at you, and you think, I'm inside. Where's the breeze coming from? And they had these fans. So great experience. Really made you think. And really cool. But I was looking for the Sphere 2 when we flew in, but I was sitting on the aisle seat, so I couldn't see out.
Outside.
Yeah, that's cool.
We gotta give you. Well, wait, I got to give kudos to MSG for coming up with that. I mean, they're keeping it in the Rangers family.
Yeah.
That's
project. They do. I'll tell you, they're really. Yeah, they're big time. Yeah. And then we were out to LA. Actually, I was trying to get together with Luke Robitaille. We had him on the podcast too. We played together in LA. But he was doing a presentation to some fans before. And then in LA, what they did, they flew out fans to watch the Kings Ranger game. So I sit in the suite there with them and kind of, joke around, be a smart ass. So I'm good at that.
Yeah.
So from a hockey perspective, when we were at both games, we've seen the Rangers play better. What were your thoughts on the hockey that you were watching?
Yeah, well, I'm really high on the team. It's good. They showed how good they can be. 2 years ago in the playoffs, they played fantastic. Last year wasn't that great. The start of this season was fantastic too. It just seems like they kind of get a little bit of more of a mental state. Like in the Vegas game, what was it? Was it 5-2 or something, or 4-2? I can't remember the score. But 3 or 4 of the goals, it was just guys just not picking up their man in front of the net, which is that's a psychological thing. That's not a physical thing. It's just not being aware, not being willing to pay the price as much. Like to win to win in the National Hockey League, the margin is pretty slim between winning and losing. It really, those little details in the game, especially in your defensive zone. But I'm really high on them. They got Jonathan Quick there still as a backup goaltender. Well, supposed to be backup goaltender. And then
right?
Yeah, he's played fantastic.
We got two starters.
Yeah, we had Luke on the show, and he said to me, and I hadn't heard this before, that Jonathan Quick was the best leader he'd ever seen, and he's played with some good leaders too. And I didn't realize that Quick was like that. I thought he was just a great athlete. A lot of times goaltenders really aren't leaders. They're the day of a game, they're kind of in a shell. But I was surprised to hear Luke say that. So I like the Rangers. Again, it just seems they just got to get, and maybe they get bored during the season or something because they are such a talented team. I don't know.
That's interesting. And here you are in LA. You got the two teams you play for. Kind of, is there any kind of, what goes through your minds? Do you kind of fall back on some memories from playing for both of the teams?
Totally.
When you're watching them both play each other.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then seeing a guy like Luke, George McPhee, who's the president in Vegas, he actually came to our suite. I called. So seeing those guys. Yeah. For me, New York and LA, both special places. Starting my career in New York, playing with some great players like Phil Esposito and Carol Vadnais and Barry Beck, all those guys. We had some really good teams. Unfortunately, we had to play the Islanders when they're in the middle of winning all their cups.
That's when I got into hockey a lot.
Oh, sorry, yeah. I watched. Yeah, that 84
because they had a parade down the street.
Yeah, I know. That 84 team that we had, we lost to the Islanders in the first round. It was a 3-5 series, and we had them 2-1 in our building. If we had won that game, we would have won the series, and we should have won that game, the game 4. And then so the next game was back in Long Island. That's where Kenny Morrow scored in overtime. Oh, man, we had Clark Gillies was on. It's funny because Clark was this big savage, just scared to death of it. He's got the one eyebrow going across the top of his head. So we do a podcast, and he contacted me on Facebook, and I was like, "What did Clark Gillies want?" I guess I was getting nervous already, thinking he's going to beat me up through Facebook. And he says he's like a little kid. He goes, "Tommy, can I come on the show? Can I come on the show?" And so we had him on, and we got to be pretty good friends. And unfortunately, we've lost him. But he even said that he thought that the 84 team that we lost, they ultimately went to the finals against Edmonton and lost. He thought that we had a good enough team that we could have won the cup that year. So it was kind of nice to hear that in one way. The other way is like, oh God, thanks a lot, Clark.
Dang it. And look, and back then too, they didn't have replays and stuff. And I've watched a lot of specials where they show highlights of all these goals that shouldn't have been goals and stuff. And so when you think back on that, do you recall like a lot, like, does that kind of pop out in your mind? Like, oh, like that was a mistake. That was a mistake. That could have gotten. Do you ever kind of think about that and where it would have gone if it had done this?
Yeah, I more look at what we did wrong, like that, how we could have played better. It's funny. I was talking to James Patrick, who I played with here in New York, and we were saying that we get now, like on YouTube, those, like Liz, you mentioned watching those old games. And if we make a mistake during the game, we immediately turn the game off. We get mad at ourselves, turn the game off, because you don't really recall. You recall all the nice plays you made, but you don't recall all the bad plays you made. So it's funny. One thing I'll just go back to, you talk about New York and how great it was in the memories. LA was, at first when I got to LA, I wasn't that I didn't want to be in LA. I just missed New York so much. I was a captain, assistant captain, a players award. I felt like, this is my team. So then to get traded, it's like, and when you're traded, the rest of the guys just move on. They've got games to play and everything. So you're sitting there all by yourself, thinking this is my team, and now I'm gone. But when I first got to LA, it was funny. We had a really good team, a good bunch of guys, like Dave Taylor's and Phil Sykes and Jimmy Fox and on, Tim Waters. I was sitting there, we had rented a home. I was married at the time. First ex-wife. We'll do another show about ex-wives. So I was sitting in a hot tub. We rented a home with a hot tub and a pool in the backyard. It was Christmas Eve, and I was sitting there having a cocktail in the hot tub. I'm thinking, man, this isn't so bad. Like, what am I complaining about? So I really got to enjoy living in Southern California. And then when Wayne Gretzky got traded there, it became that was the place to be in the National Hockey League. So great memories from both places. A little bit different in the starting your career one place and ending another. But and LA was great too. I played with John Tonelli, who I played against a lot with the Islanders. Got to play with Larry Robinson at the end of his career as well, and I've just always admired him as a person and as a player. He was funny. You remember to babble on a little bit? Or you want me? I could babble on forever if you guys let me.
Oh, no, this is great. We love hearing about it. This is amazing.
So I'll tell you my favorite Larry Robinson story. So I admired him. Like he was, he could do everything. He hit, fight, score, beat up Dave Schultz, do everything. And won all the cups in Montreal. So when you first get to go play in Montreal, and you're on the ice with Larry Robinson, like it's a Montreal Forum. It's like unbelievable. Like you're just, I can't believe I'm doing this. And I was assistant captain, so it must have been like second or third year in the league. And Larry was assistant captain. Something happened on the ice where the two any captains that are on the ice go have a conversation with the referee. So we're standing center ice at Montreal Forum. And now remember, I know Larry Robinson's standing to my left, and I'm thinking to myself, this is unbelievable. And all of a sudden I hear this chirping, like he's saying something to me. And I'm thinking to myself, is Larry Robinson talking to me? And I can see the referee's dying laughing because he must have seen Larry do this before. And I turned and looked at Larry. I said, you talking to me? He says, what do you want, old man? Like this, Larry's probably like 10, 15 years older than me. I said, you're calling me old man? And he just turns and skates away. And I thought the referee's looking at me because he knew the impact it was having on me, right? This is Larry Robinson joking around with me at center ice at Montreal Forum. So then to get to play with him in LA was really something too. And I told him the story. He must have done it so many times. He didn't remember doing it to me, but so that was, maybe it's, again, I'm so fortunate my career started with Phil Esposito in New York. Again, all the great old players, like Steve Vickers and Walkichucks and those people. Carol Vadney I've talked about too. He was just retiring when I was coming in, so he became a coach, defense's coach. And he must have saw something in me. He kind of took me under his wing and just treated me fantastic. And I've always thanked him for that. Again, we've lost him as well, but he was a huge part of my career, especially early.
I want to go back to something that you said earlier, and you were talking about the sort of the emotional feeling of being traded. And obviously, as the trade deadline approaches, we're looking at a lot of moves. I'm seeing rumors flying left and right. But as a player, I'm very curious. We don't really hear about like how that impacts you personally. So can you talk a little bit about your experience
playing right now? Like what's going to be what's when we come back after today's All-Star game and everyone's playing? Are we going to see, are people nervous, with all these trade rumors going on for the next couple of weeks? Well,
it's a great question. There's a lot of different categories, right? There's a lot of guys that maybe aren't getting played a lot. They want to get traded, maybe a surprise to others. Sometimes they're shocking. Again, you got families too, kids in school, most times the wife, all her friends that she's made in that certain city. So there's a lot of things going to it. It is funny because, I was traded in my 7th year in league. So there's a lot of trades that happened prior to that where I was not a part of. So all I saw it from a distance. I didn't really experience it all. So it was always, once the guy got traded, we'd go for a beer with him. And then next day we go to the rink and it's business as usual. That guy's gone now and somebody takes his spot. So you don't think too much of it. But when you get traded, again, you go for the beer with the guys and then you wake up the next morning and you're not going to the practice rink anymore with the same guys. You're not going to the game anymore. And again, for a player like me, My team was everything. I had to be like a team player. I was such a big, guys get traded to the Rangers. They tell me, everybody tells me I'm supposed to go to beer with you. Everybody tells me you're supposed to have lunch with you. I was that team guy, as assistant captain, and loved it. So then when I get traded, where's everybody? All these guys I bonded with. Yeah, but it's not their fault either. Not like they're doing anything wrong. They got work to do. So it is.
And then what is it like to face your old team the first time you play? I mean, we saw Quick do that in LA, which was very interesting. And, obviously he didn't win that game. He played well, but he didn't win that game. And I don't know if you saw his interview after the game, but he was not a happy camper. So in his interview, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, the interviewers were asking him, like trying to get him to say, oh, I was so emotional coming back. It was so special. They kept asking him, like, was this an emotional night for you? And he goes, no. And then they go, well, what about the video that they played? Like that had to like elicit emotional reaction. He goes, no, the NHL makes a lot of videos. I'm here to win games. So you could tell he was not happy about how that had gone, but that does have to have a weird psychological impact. And the other thing is that we've noticed that as the Rangers play, all of their ex-players are almost guaranteed to score against them. It's so noticeable now.
I know. Well, it's more, I don't know if emotional is really the right word. When you go back to the old bit, like for me going back to Madison Square Garden, that was the weirdest feeling. Because, I played there so long, you're going in a different, like you're going in where the Zamboni goes. Instead of you go down to the wrong locker room, the people you walk into the game, all these people, you've seen them so many times. So that was like coming to play when the Rangers came to LA and played. It was by that time it was over. I moved on. It's funny because a lot of those guys are your friends. So when you play, I was supposed to be a physical player. So now you're hammering these guys that you're buddies with. But that's it is a weird. So we had a playoff series with the Kings when Jimmy Carson had gotten traded, the Wayne Gretzky trade. So now he's with the Edmonton Oilers. And we had a playoff series where we were down 3-1 against Edmonton and ultimately came back to win the series 7-1. And Jimmy Carson and I were good friends, but we're playing to win. I hit him and just knocked him out cold, hit him with a forearm shiver. And it sounds terrible, but I didn't think much of it because the desire to win was greater than I didn't really want to hurt him. Yeah. So it is going back to the old building. For me, going back to Madison Square Garden was the weirdest feeling. Like the whole, you're playing in the same building. It shouldn't be that big of a deal, but it's just the whole process of going to the rink. We had a funny player, Larry Playfair. He's a big, tough guy. And he played for Buffalo for many years, and he was with the Kings when I was there. He's a great practical joker. So he knew I was all excited to come back to New York City. And I would, in New York City, you don't go on a bus back to the hotel. You can take a cab if you want to. So he had taken my pocket, my suit pants, and put my money in the pocket and then sewed it so I couldn't have access to the money. Now, So he knew I was so excited, I'm running around meeting people and everything. So I get in the cab, and of course the cab driver doesn't speak English. So I go to pay, and I can't give him the money, and the guy thinks I'm trying to rip him off or something like that. So I had to rip my pocket.
Your hands in your pants. This is all good story.
It was so funny because
it was him. Like when you reached in, did you know like he had done it?
Yeah, he was really good at that guy. He would spend a lot, like he'd get to the rink early just to get somebody with some practical joke. Like he'd do things. He'd put a water cup above your stall and then run a skate lace all the way around the locker room to where his was. It's a stupid little thing. It's a cup of water, but he'd spend hours setting it up. And then he'd sit down and he'd pull the string and then the water would land on your head. And so he took he really was good at sewing this up. Like I had no clue what was going on until I tried to put my hand in my pocket. So yeah,
I think I saw a YouTube video about you playing a practical joke on a couple of your teammates. Do you have a favorite practical joke that you played on?
Yeah, well, the baby powder in the hairdryer is the best one. So Nikki Fatiu actually
classics.
Oh, here's the thing though. So Nikki Fatiu would do it after the game. That's how I learned to do this. So I thought, okay, I'm going to be smarter than that. I'm going to put the baby powder in the hairdryer before the game. So it's all set up and ready to go. And what I forgot was our assistant coach was the eye in the sky. So he had this whole routine where he would work out in the locker room. There's a gym next to it. And then he'd put his suit on, put his contact lenses in, then dry his hair. He had this whole process to be getting ready for the game. But I forgot that he does all this. But there's 5 hair dryers. I only put the baby powder in one hair dryer. So we've gone for warm-ups. We're just all standing up, getting ready to go for the game. And all of a sudden I heard the hairdryer go on. I'm thinking, oh my God. and he happened to get the one with the baby powder. So he had his contact lenses in and everything. And he's screaming. He said, Laidlaw, I'm gonna get you. And the guys are dying laughing. It was hilarious. And I said, listen, I wish I had set it up like I really did that to mean to do it, but it was total accident that I got him. But that was probably one of the best we ever had. Yeah. The guy. So we were rooming. Bob Bourne and I roomed together with the Kings too for a year, and we were always doing practical jokes. And we were staying in a hotel out by Edmonton Airport, leaving the next morning. It was one of those hotels. There's a big lobby, and all the rooms are right off the lobby. The flowers and branches and all this kind of stuff around. So the guys to get us back, we'd gone out and had a few adult beverages. So we come back to the room like 2 or 3 in the morning, and the guys had taken everything in our room and set it up outside our room, the bed, the nightstand, the lamp, everything. And so we come home and we're pretty hammered, and we just said we were tired and hammered. We said just lay down and go to sleep. And the security wouldn't let us do that, so they put all the stuff back in the room. But that was classic. That's the thing too. If you're going to be a practical joker, people are going to get you back. And that's good.
You have to be ready.
Do you think there's still, are there players now that you're aware of that kind of keep that level? I know we see a couple of things like online, that they'll kind of think, but how do you think that is, with people that that are active in the NHL? You still kind of like to do those things behind the scenes?
I don't think they do as much. I think they have to be so careful, right? Like their own little corporation, really, right? They make so much money. There's no cell phone cameras around. There's no Twitter before. So we would do things like, we didn't fly charter flights back then until later on in LA. So we got on a plane with everybody else. They put us all in one section, but we're sitting in a commercial flight, and guys would fall asleep, and we cut their tie, or we put shaving cream on their head, or we steal their shoes. Like I still can't sleep on a plane now because I think somebody's going to get me back after all the things we did. So
that's funny.
Yeah. So we wouldn't be able to. I don't think the guys would even. They wouldn't be able to get away with it. Yeah. We were, and this is again before 9/11 too. So the carousel where the luggage comes out. So it goes back inside the building and then comes back out. So it's really like back those days set up different. So we would get on the carousel and ride it around, and then come back out again, and be like a statue, like we're standing there, like looking like this. It just, and the people that weren't on the team were looking like, who are these guys? They're a bunch of morons. That was fun. Yeah, we had a blast. Traveling on the road was a blast. And again, almost everybody you play with is all the same kind of guys. You just different personalities, but yeah, we had a lot of fun.
So you talk about going back to Madison Square Garden when you were playing, and this is why we go off script. I don't think any of these topics we've been talking about were things we planned on talking about, which is fantastic. But when you're traveling around and going back from team to team, tell me your favorite MSG. We know that's the answer. Your favorite arena versus like the worst arena.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So my rookie year in the NHL, we had a good playoff run, went to the semifinals, and we played St. Louis, and I was really playing well. So I've always just had this feeling like I went back to St. Louis. I just felt good about my game. It was really hard to, people like they go to Maple Leaf Gardens or something because I'm from the Toronto area. And that was cool going there too. But again, the memories of playing in St. Louis were really good. The old Checker Dome. By far the worst was Boston Garden. So my first year in training camp, had a really good camp. So I'm obviously still with the team. And our first game, so my first real regular season game in the NHL was in Boston. All these great players, tough players, Wayne Cashman, Stan Jonathan, all these guys. And John Davison was our goaltender. And we're playing in the old Boston Garden. There's rats running through the locker room and everything. It's just totally,
of course they are.
He was. And again, to go on and off the ice, you have to go through the Boston bench. That's how it was just set up to be totally intimidating. So John Davis is in net. I'm obviously on the ice, and I've got the puck to his left, and I'm trying to shoot the puck around the other side. There's pressure coming on. So I'm just I've made thousands of times, and so nervous I shot it off JD's leg and into our own net, scored in our own net. This is my first game, first period. So now JD was one of these guys too, that this larger than life, guy. He was star of the 79 team when they went to the finals. So you want to really be approved by John Davidson. And the look he gave me through his mask was like, I just wanted to go home. I was just like, wow, this is awful. What have I done?
You remember it, right? You'll never forget it.
Burned it in your memory.
Yeah, I go back to the bench. There's all these veteran players, Freddie Shearer's coaching and everything. There's nothing they can say to you. Like, it's not a coachable moment. They're going to say, well, don't shoot the puck in your own net, Tom.
You weren't the last one to do that.
Yeah,
just so you
no.
know.
But I'll tell you, it's an awful feel, especially when you're a rookie. Oh my God. It's like, because you're thinking you've worked your whole life to get here. Now, all of a
Well,
sudden,
how
like
about
an
when
idiot.
you're not a rookie doing it?
Yeah. Well, I had to play like that at the Forum. We're playing Edmonton. It was like a hockey hall of fame. Yuri Curry's there. Mark Messie's taking the face off. Wayne Gretzky's taking the face off for us. And I'm on the ice, and Gretz wins the face off, comes back to me, and I've done this play tens of thousands of times. I either pass to the forward, pass to my partner, carry the puck, whatever. The puck just explodes like a grenade on my stick. I have no clue what happened, and I can't find it now. It's in my feet, and Yuri Curry comes flying in, takes the puck in, and score on a breakaway. And I'm supposed to be Mr. Steady Eddie, right? Like always doing the right thing. And Kerry Fraser was referee, and I'll never forget. And when he played for a while, he established a relationship with referees, joking around. So he gets the puck at center ice, getting the face off at center ice, and he stands there. He won't drop the puck. Okay, he's laughing at me, and everybody's looking at me like, Laidlaw, what are you doing? And I started yelling. I said, "Drop the effing puck! Drop the puck!" And he was pretty funny, but he was pretty good. It was good.
Oh yeah, all the things that I'm sure you guys hear on the ice that no one else can hear because there's a glass going around. You can't hear anything.
Oh, that's hilarious out there. They're not allowed to say some of the stuff that we said back then, which is probably pretty good. But some of the guys were like just funny guys. Yeah, there's good lines, good one-liners out there.
Go ahead, Liz. You have a question?
I was going to say, it's so interesting to hear hear all this, Tom. This is amazing. We'd love to sort of get your thoughts on where do you think the Rangers are going forward this year? What changes do you think they have to make in order to make this season, one where there's a real contention for the Stanley Cup?
Yeah. Well, they're in that stretch where you're saying they need to do something, right? Because they're not playing well. But if you'd had this conversation at the start of the year, like the first month or month and a half, you'd say, don't change anything. These guys, this is a good hockey team. Chris Drury went out and got some older players on 1 year short-term, short money contracts, thinking, okay, I'm really not tying up a lot of cap space. These guys will be incentivized to play well because they want to continue to play. They're on 1 year deals. So I think he did a lot of good things. He put a new coach in, Peter Laviolette, has won the Stanley Cup before, got two fantastic goaltenders right now. So I've tried not to look and say, okay, how are they playing right now? How good do you think the team is? Losing Hedl for the year, that hurts. He was really playing well. Lafreniere and Capo, the other two young players, probably the tough thing for them is they're playing against the New Jersey Devils with they're all their young players. They're playing so well. It kind of puts more pressure on, more pressure, but it's just more visible that maybe those guys aren't doing as well as you thought they would. And that if you went back 3 or 4 years, you'd think, okay, those good young players, Hedl, Capo, and Lafreniere, you really thought, okay, not only will they be good now, but they're going to get better and better. So that's the future of the team. That doesn't look as good right now.
That seems to be an expectation that hasn't lived up to people's, ideas. And so we've talked about this a lot too before, because, when Vegas was formed, their team was young, and I think they just kind of were like, all right, it's our first year, but then it took them all the way, to the top. Yep. And then there was that trend that, and I would actually grab Darryl Evans and talk to him about it, with this trend of going younger. And so Rangers were kind of the team that picked up on that and went really young. I think with that, kind of what you were saying, it's like, they would get better and they would form better, and you build that more solid team. And now we're kind of looking at these teams saying, okay, well, that didn't really work. We're going to kind of start getting older. So now there's a shift in kind of leveling out that age and kind of having them look, because there's a little more experience gained in people that are a little older. So,
see, and I think that was a mistake by teams to looking at Vegas about the youth part of it, because to me, the biggest part, Gerard Gallant, I think, is a fantastic coach for that kind of a team, because what he does is he says, listen, if you're working hard and make a mistake, don't worry, you're still going to go back on the ice. I want you to be free to be making good plays. Don't be thinking about making a mistake, thinking, okay, now you're going to get benched. That's his big way of coaching. And that's the way he coached here in New York. Some people would criticize him because there's not enough of a system, but that's the way he coaches, and he had success coaching that way. So I think when they looked at Vegas, we looked at Vegas. First of all, George McPhee, the GM, did a fantastic job of kind of fleecing some of the other teams, right? Getting, top players so that you don't take the guy you say you want to take on the expansion draft. So again, I think the key was, and I mean this is a compliment to George. I think I think he still thought, okay, we're really not going to be that good, because who's it? Was it? He got somebody that he knew he was going to, big left winger that he knew he would trade at the deadline. So he'd help him a little bit now, trade him at the deadline and get something for him. But they played, like you said, they played so well They didn't have to make those trades. But again, I just think it was a bunch of guys that were on short-term deals that, hadn't really done really well, or maybe weren't given much of a chance with their old team. And now they're saying, okay, now I've got a chance to be that NHL player, and they all were fired up for it. So, but that, that happens with the NHL. Lots of copycat league in a lot of cases where they think, okay, this is how this team did it. So, to me, hockey's still hockey. It's like you got to have. You look at Vegas, you look at Tampa, big physical players that can skate, good goaltending, and sometimes it's just a crapshoot too. Like you get guys like some players like John Druce with Washington Capitals many years ago was a pretty average right winger, but all of a sudden playoffs came around. Chris Conto was like that too. Guys that maybe didn't have great careers, but all of a sudden the playoffs just got on fire, and that happens. So to me, sometimes people try to strategize. Okay, here's what this team did. Sometimes it's just the guys get on a roll too. So so with the Rangers, to me, I wouldn't do anything. I would, I think it's more psychological with them. I think it's just, okay, we're good enough, but okay, we need to pay the price to win.
You have to play like they have to play like they know that they're good enough. And it's almost like they sort of forgot about a month ago that they actually are an incredibly talented group of people. And something about it is not clicking the way it was earlier in the season. Yeah.
And they're like their power play. And that's such a big thing in playoffs too, because it really, other teams are trying to be physical against you, and your power play is going well, and the other team's taking penalties. Well, then they have to stop being so physical, right? So if power play is not that good, then now they can push you around a little bit more. And the Rangers, that's the one part they may not be. That whole toughness thing is kind of gone in the NHL. And so I was going to say the Rangers are as tough maybe as you'd like to see them, but again, who is? The game's just changed so much.
Well, they're tough, and it's funny you say that because I've always kind of said East Coast plays more, strategic, and more skill kind of, and then you got the West Coast with like the Kings, so physical and such a different sense of play there. And that's why I kind of love watching when the Rangers come into town, because, that's, I think I want to say it's their biggest matchup is this West Coast kind of road trip, because most of the time the teams play really, really physical, and then it kind of pumps them up for getting into the playoffs. So and I've never really seen and yet the East Coast has I think we have the hardest division, I always, when it gets time closer to playoffs, I always hate our division. I'm like, why do we have to have the best teams and fight so hard? Because it makes us look worse, but we're not, right now we're not bad. We're still in first place, and we're still, doing well. And everyone kind of has their moments. I kind of was telling Liz, it's more like I look at the stock market, I look at the long term and see. So the other thing is, when you hit the playoffs, how does your mentality change from like, a regular game to like that first game in a playoff? I mean, does it change for you? Like, do you think or for players?
See, I think for a guy like me, I had a job to do, right? It was to show up every game, make the outlet pass. So I didn't want things to change. And people say, well, geez, you get to a game 7, do you have to change your preparation? The answer is no. In fact, stick to your preparation, stick to your process. So for me, now maybe goal scorers, goalies, maybe there's more pressure on them to get things done. Mine is to stop things from happening as a player. So again, if you're a rookie player, I think the playoffs can really affect you a little bit. Veterans players have done it before, just realize, okay, I just need to do it harder. I need to hit harder, skate harder. I mean, because it's an 82 game season, you'd like to say you're playing as hard as you can every game, but you can't. It's just traveling and all that kind of stuff. So it's more of that. The one thing too is really important. You look at the teams that win; they usually don't play all 7-game series. Like they'll get shorter series, like maybe a 4-game series or a 5-game series. That's a big thing. The Rangers 2 years ago, when they did so well, I think they ran out of gas a little bit too. I think they went to 7 games with Pittsburgh. Was it 7 games with Raleigh? Yeah. So by the time they get, they're tired.
Not only that, but it was like 3 overtimes.
Yes. Yeah. And you think,
remember that one?
Yeah. And those games they are intense. I mean, again, you got to play the same way, but the intensity level is just ratcheted up a little bit, and they, more pressure. And so it's fun. I'll tell you, playoffs are great, especially if you get on a roll and you're doing well. Now the weather gets nicer. You're not practicing as much. It's just that whole feeling about, like now you get down to the point where there's only 4 teams left and you're one of the 4 teams. I was unfortunate. I got the semifinals twice, never got to the finals, but just even to get to the semifinals it's just a special feeling. Like it's just, you've dreamed your whole life of getting to this point. Like everybody wants to play in the National Hockey League, but you really want to be playing for the Stanley Cup. So, and it's funny, you don't touch the trophy if you're a player until you've actually won it. I was lucky when I was in the agent business. Warren Reichel, one of my clients, played for Colorado when they won in Florida in overtime. Yuri Coop scored the winning goal. So it was a late game that went into overtime. So I couldn't get into the locker room until like 3 or 4 in the morning. Everybody's hammered. I wanted to get in and get my picture taken. In fact, I've got the picture on here someplace where Warren and I were, and it's the first time I ever touched the trophy. So it was pretty cool.
So you did touch it.
Yeah. Well, I figured my client.
I licked it actually.
Yeah.
So you know.
Yeah.
When I was up in Toronto and I had the opportunity, I licked it.
Yeah.
And it was the Rangers, so it's fine.
Yeah.
So
Thanks for the curse. Appreciate that, Christine.
Yeah,
It is
you know what's funny? Yeah, you talk about big moments. So when Wayne Gretzky got traded to LA, he was he was about to break Gordie Howe's all-time points record. And it happened to be, we're traveling around. So Gordie Howe was traveling around with us, which is like, and Wayne had a couple of games where he didn't score. So we're saying, don't score, Wayne. We want to hang out with Gordie Howe, right? Gordie's telling us old stories. Great guy. And so we happen to get to Edmonton, and he's 1 point behind Gordie Howe. And it's in Edmonton, so it's the drama. You just feel it in the building. And we had a 4-on-4. And so it was Bernie Nichols, Wayne Gretzky, myself, and Steve Duchesne on the ice. So I'm the defensive player. Those guys are the offensive player. So we've got Edmonton hemmed in their zone. It's Mark Messier, Gary Curry, Paul Coffey, Charlie Huddy, I think. So it's like I went to the Hall of Fame guys. Nice. And so we've hemmed Edmonton in. They're running around. And, of course, they're not paying attention to me at all, Edmonton or others. They've got 2 guys on Wayne. I happen to be standing in the slot all by myself. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it was Grant Fuhr. I can't remember who was in net. And so Wayne gets me the puck. Now, I'm realizing here, if I score here, this is going to be the point that ties Gordie Howe's record. It's going to go down to history, and I'll be the one that scored the goal. So I go into panic mode. I didn't want to shoot the puck because I thought I'd miss, or I thought I'd shoot it right into his chest or something. So Bernie Nichols was covered by Charlie Huddy at the side of the net. And I said, I'm passing to Bernie no matter what. And he was an incredible athlete. So he happens to get it and tips it in and scores. So that's the point that Wayne gets an assist. That's the point that ties it. So the crowd's going crazy. They're cheering and everything. And everybody's jumping on the ice. And I go over to Bernie. And he's looking at me, he says, what were you doing passing me? I'm covered. So him and I you can't see it in the video, but him and I are dying laughing. Actually looks like this fantastic play I made, but it really wasn't. It was just me panicking. And so when I see the video now, it's hilarious because nobody notices that that's really what went on, except for Bernie and I, really. So it was cool.
That's great. So one of the questions I've kind of been thinking of just to ask anybody, but it sounds like, with all that you've kind of played with so many people, is there anybody that you would have wanted to, that you didn't get a chance to play with, on the same line or the same team or against, so that you can,
Well, Bobby Orr was such an influential player, changing the game, the way defenseman played particularly. And such a great guy too, such an ambassador for the game. Would have been pretty cool to play with him. Again, being around Gordie Howe, Bobby Hull came and tried out with us my second year in the league. He had retired. Anderson Ulf, who he played with in Winnipeg in the WHA, were on the team. So he came for tryouts. So he was in training camp with us. And that was a cool experience. So my dad, we lived on the farm in Canada, outside of Toronto. And somehow he got us into Maple Leaf Gardens the day of the game for the morning skate. And the Chicago Blackhawks were there. And I don't know how it all happened, but I had the little mini hockey stick and everything. And Bobby Hull came out of the locker room and stood and talked to me for 10 minutes and signed the little stick for me and everything. And I always remember that. I think that was so cool that this guy would take the day of a game, would take his time. He's Bobby Hull. It's not just some average player. So I always remember that. And it really influenced me. So when I'm around kids, I remembered how I felt when an NHL player took that time. So when he came over to training camp, we first had practices in Rye, New York, where our practice facility was. And then we were flying over to Finland. And so first day he was there, must have been about a dozen of us. All went to lunch with him. And we sat there for 3 hours after having beers, listening to him tell stories, just Bobby Hull telling stories. And that was the coolest thing, partly because I remember back when I was a kid, and now here I am playing with Bobby Hull. We're about to play with Bobby Hull and him telling all these stories. So yeah, those guys, Bobby Hull, Bobby Orr, those guys from the past, again, because you think back to those 6 teams and they were just iconic, Saturday night watching Hockey Night in Canada. And to be able to, Bobby Orr would have been pretty cool, but, spend time with Gordie Howe and Bobby Hull was cool too. But you're right. I was so lucky, the Larry Robinsons. Wayne Gretzky was, you can't say enough good stuff about him. It's like he knew how much, when he was a kid, he knew how much of an influence he was going to have on the game, other people. When he first got to LA, we had training camp, and the old guy sitting in the back of the bus, and we had the beer cooler up front, and things have changed a lot. So Wayne gets on the bus, and I'm sitting back there, and we know each other, we've spoken, but he grabs a six-pack and he's heading back to the bus, and I'm thinking, oh God, I'm getting traded. Wayne doesn't want me on the team, but it was anything but the truth. He sat down and started telling old stories about. So when I played junior hockey, I grew up in Brampton. He was at Brantford, and he was this good young player. It's like, I think he's 2 or 3 years younger than me. So because he was so good, he would come up and play at this higher level, and we tried to kill him all the time. We couldn't. And so he comes to the back of the bus as we first got to training camp. He starts asking me, he says, who's that guy, Bill Brown, or whatever the guy's name was you played with in junior? And I'm going, how can you remember this guy? I don't, like, he was really a student of the game. And the people that played it. And he's fantastic. It's the first time I'd really talked to him from that kind of stuff. And I just walked away thinking, wow, this guy's just like, you can tell his whole life, he knew he was going to be Wayne Gretzky, not just some average NHL player, but Wayne Gretzky. And I think his father played a huge role in that too. I heard him tell a story recently where they played a game at the end of the year, which was really a nothing game. And they ended up losing 8-1. Wayne didn't get any points, whatever. And the dad got in the car. He wasn't mad at him. He says, Wayne, you're Wayne Gretzky. You can't be just like everybody else. People come from all over to watch you play, no matter when it is. And I think he really lived by that. So he was cool.
Yeah, back when I met you actually in person, it was 2 years ago at the alumni game, Rangers and Islanders, which just occurred this last weekend as well. And it was right after Mike Bossy had just passed too, as I recall. So, right. and when I started getting into hockey, being on Long Island and, being 10 minutes from Nassau Coliseum. It's funny because I was always a Rangers fan, but I wasn't allowed to go to the games. So to root for the Islanders, next best thing. But Mike Bossy was amazing. And I want to say, and correct me if I'm wrong on the other side, but I mean, I always felt that he was very well respected, too. So, with these top players and people that you've gone through, and Mike Bossy was, the kind of, I'm going to say the Gretzky of that day. And then, and then Gretzky surpassed him and became the great one that he is. So, whether like other things that you kind of learned from some of these other players and, and the respect, and how it was earned, through your playing with these guys?
Well, he's a great example. Rick Middleton was like this. Joey Mullen was like this, where they would make these plays. Like if you watch him play, he really wasn't that smooth skater. He wasn't like a smooth stick handler. In fact, he looked kind of choppy. Like Rick Middleton, he was a beer league player, looked like sometimes. And that's the thought that he would have. But then they'd make a play and score a goal, and you think, wow, that's just lucky. But then you watch them over and over, and they do it over and over and over. So it's not luck. It's stick work, and they're smart too. So Joey Mullen, I'll never forget one time. It was early in my career. I think he was playing. I can't remember. I think he was in Calgary, I believe. And so I'm this big, tough defenseman. And little Joey Mullen comes to the front of the net. So I'm cross-checking, trying to get him going. So he skates away. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm the tough guy. I showed him who's boss, right? And as soon as he skated away, you could tell they practiced this play. Whoever had the puck in the corner, it was all timed. So he would back away into this high slot, and I'm standing in front of the net still. He'd get the one-timer and score. And I'm thinking, oh God, he played me. Like he just used me because he'd done it. So those kinds of things from those star players, like it wasn't just, yes, they worked hard. Yes, they were skilled, but they competed, man. And I would say that about every skilled player every star player that I played against or played with. That competition level was by far the best thing they had. Wayne Gretzky, Larry Robinson, they loved the game. Larry Robinson, when he played like 20 years when he came to LA, and he was like a little kid. I was amazed. He just loved it. He loved going over with the boys for beers. Like at practice, he's working hard, he's laughing, he's joking around, and I think that's all. Phil was the same way. He had such a passion for the game. There's other players who were good players, but it could have been better players, but just didn't have that passion for whatever. And then they worked hard and they were glad they played in the NHL. But like those, and I say this now when I don't have regrets in my life, but I say to people, listen, the thing I have in common with Wayne Gretzky is we both accomplished our goals. My goal was to play in the National Hockey League. His goal was to be the best player that ever played in the National Hockey League. So, so I say to people, seriously, kids, don't just dream to be doing something. Dream to be the best at it, knowing full well that you may not, the chances of ever getting that are slim, but shoot to be the best. And then if it doesn't happen, you've now taught yourself in other walks of life, your career, your relationships, whatever it is, be the best at it. Don't just try to get it done. So.
I love that. Well, on that note, Tom, thank you so much for joining us today. This was absolute.
We're done. I thought we were going for 3 hours. What's wrong with you? Man, I can talk.
We are definitely going to have you back on because now that we have so many more questions. You obviously, you know, have so many good stories, everything, you know, and we can.
Yeah, we truly could be talking all day long. I don't want to take up the rest of your day, and also we know we have the All-Star game coming up, so we want to make sure people have the chance to watch that. Thank you so much, Tom. We really again so grateful to have you.
My pleasure. A lot of fun. We'll have it out again. We'll do it again.
Looking forward to it. All right.
Take care, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Yay!